The term coyote ugly refers to a situation after a night of drinking where a person, usually male, thinking about it, it probably happens to females more than males, but they wake up the next day next to a sexual partner from the night before who is completely ugly or undesirable sleeping on their arm. The helpless person will rather bite their own arm off than wake the person next to them and face the consequences of their actions from the previous evening. It's called coyote ugly because apparently coyotes will bite their own arms off when trapped. Play that intro, boy. Hey all you freaks and geeks, welcome to the Lion Kingdom. I'm the Lion King, and today I'm talking about brush wolves, prairie wolves, the American jackal, or sometimes even called song dogs. Due to their vocalizations, whatever you call them, if you live in North America, you've probably encountered a coyote before, with them being located in literally every state in the USA, even going as far north as Canada and some parts of Alaska. And this being because coyotes are so easily able to adapt to human-oriented society. After all, they are the closest cousin of the modern dog to any other animal, both belonging to the Canis genus, and as far as I can tell, the only real difference between them is one is domesticated while the other isn't, to the point where coy dogs exist, which is just a breed between a dog and a coyote. There's also the much more common coy wolves, which you can probably guess what those are breeds of. Now, despite many believing them to be nothing more than dumb wild animals, they actually thrive so well because of their intelligence and opportunistic behavior, as well as being able to live almost anywhere in any environment, with them being omnivorous scavengers, with them even cannibalizing their own if necessary. With some old predator master forums I could find asking if coyotes eat one another, and one member answering, they will kill and eat the weak and old. Also, I saw a pack kill a loner and gut him, with another saying protein is protein, and one more saying the only scavenger I've ever seen eat a dead coyote is a coyote, which you might think sounds cold, but I think it just shows the efficient nature of the beast, with them being able to analyze the resources in any given region and adapt accordingly, changing their pack size and hunting regulations depending, allowing them to successfully adapt to urban environments, learning how to navigate roads, use open spaces, and minimize human contact. Efficient at finding food and shelter in cities. They're pretty much the roaches of the dog world. Nothing can stop. And the worst part is it's almost completely our fault that they're so widespread and willing to adapt to new places.
Yes, but he let a coyote in the house when he did.
Open the back door so it has a way out. You do realize this is about climate change.
It's mostly because the hunting and decline of their natural predators like bears and wolves. They're more willing to expand and freely adapt. And while at one point coyotes did fear humans because of food loss and the loss of their natural habitats, as well as being habituated to humans due to constant feeding, or when they're protecting their young or their territory, they no longer see us as a threat. And instead of relocating like they would with other predators when humans are around, instead coyotes will have more offspring, with coyote pups coming out at about 6 to 7 pups usually. In areas where they've been frequently hunted, they produce a litter of about 10 to a dozen at a time, making them almost impossible to get rid of once they've settled down somewhere. And they're becoming increasingly hostile and bold towards humans, especially children and small animals. In an article I found archived by the University of Nebraska, written by Robert M. Tim, Rex O. Baker, Joe R. Bennett, and Craig C. Coulihan, written March 2004, titled Coyote Attacks, An Increasing Suburban Problem, talks about how coyote attacks are becoming more and more frequent. At one point, they list all the coyote attacks in California since 1978, and it's a whopping 89. It's a whopping 89 attacks, 16 of which happened in 2001 alone, with a good number of them being children getting grabbed off porches. Some are literally coyotes snatching children from parents and trying to run, and even attacks on adults. And if you see in the beginning, the attacks usually start off with them only approaching groups of 1 to 2 kids, maybe a small pet here and there, but as time goes on, they get bolder and bolder, and you start to notice that they begin to approach adults or larger groups of children. Then they begin to approach adults and even attacking multiple adults at a time, trying to snatch pets off their leash. And the list only really mentions pets in reference to owners who were around when it happens. Who knows how many pets were just snatched off their porch or out of the yard without anyone ever noticing or being reported. The article noting that it was becoming more and more frequent just to see coyotes roaming during the day or in your backyard as well. As areas with higher populations of people have more frequent attacks. Remember, coyotes are good at measuring out resources in an area, with the ABC News listing them as the 9th most dangerous animal to your pet in America. But the people's fight with coyotes started well before the early 2000s. On the Nova Scotia Wildlife website under coyotes, you can find an article called When Coyotes Became a Nuisance by Ross Hall, talking about how in 1976 sheep farms in Picton County were losing sheep to unknown predators. Kill sites were often far apart and not typical of a bear. But after the trapping and shooting of 2 coyotes in 1977 confirmed that the coyotes were the killers, by 1990 the coyote population had expanded to all parts of the province, and most of the sheep producers have felt the anguish of finding wounded and dead sheep in their pastures. Farmers at the time being recommended to keep their sheep in at night, as well as guard dogs and setting up electric fences, as well as trapping and shooting them and other methods of protecting livestock. In another article in the New York Times called A Plague of Coyotes, written March 28, 1982, quote, in our age of diminishing expectations, consider how the coyote prospers. Coyotes occupied 3 times the range they occupied 200 years ago. With the elimination of wolves, their old rivals, they have moved into New York, Massachusetts, and have been seen in Connecticut, New Jersey, perhaps 10,000 in Maine, where 15 years ago, woodsmen never saw coyotes in California. Where suburbs claw up the arid hillsides, coyotes trot into yards and eat from dog dishes and drink from golden sprinklers. And as they have for more than a century, coyotes feast upon the lambs in open ranges of Wyoming, New Mexico. Ranchers trap them, shoot them, poison them illegally. Federal predator control agents and private fur trappers alone kill more than 435,000 coyotes a year. But they keep on coming, with one sheep rancher even saying, I have a general feeling that we're transitory, but they're not. Civilization may end and man may vanish, but not the coyote. He'll be here forever. The article notes an incident in 1979. In August, a 3-year-old Kelly Keene was killed on the street outside her Glendale home. The incident was the first recorded killing of a human by a coyote, with many believing it to be the fault of Nixon, who issued an executive order in 1972 prohibiting the use of poisons to kill coyotes on federal lands, and the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA for short, just
horrible things are going to happen! Time is short!
just straight up banned the use of poisons altogether, with Van Swearingen and Artesia Wool Cooperative says, as a result, we're not handling 50% of the wool each year that we were handling 15 years ago. Hatch Howard, a sheep rancher, has strong feelings about coyotes. In 1865, at the age of 11, Howard's grandfather pushed a handcart over the Rocky Mountains to Salt Lake City. The boy's mother died along the way and was buried near Bitter Creek, Wyoming. Howard recalls his grandfather telling him that he feared coyotes would desecrate his mother's grave, and that the survivors in the party were afterwards sickened by the howls of coyotes. The Howards went into the sheep ranching, and 3 generations later, the family is still sickened by the howls. On a recent trip to California, Howard saw a coyote dart onto the road way in front of him and says, quote, I guess I thought if it's there, I guess I thought it's going to get into somebody's livestock, so I put my foot on the gas pedal, which is just a hilarious thing to think. He just sees a coyote, narrows his eyes, and just, not on my watch, not today, and just barrels down the road at the coyote. Anyway, Stan Van Vliet, a pastoralist or cattle rancher, with the article having this to say about him. Van Vliet, the wildlife that shares his 50,000-acre ranch, he is proud of the bald eagles that roost each winter by the creek. He is not a hunter, and he prides himself on giving refuge to the ducks and geese on his reservoir. He does not allow his dogs to kill cottontails that nibble at the grass in his yard. When a lamb dies of its own inadequacies, he lets the eagles scavenge the carcass. As long as they have something to eat, he explains, eagles will not kill lamb. But there is one creature that does not enjoy Van Vliet's tolerance, the coyote. 15 years ago, Van Vliet ran a 3,500-acre sheep ranch in Nevada. In 4 years, he calculates he lost over $105,000 worth of sheep to coyotes. He would buy a helicopter and begin flying low over the rocks at dawn, and said he saw coyotes standing out golden in the slanting sunlight. He would shoot about 15 coyotes a day from the helicopter. Today, he flies almost daily over his California ranch and shoots about 70 coyotes a year. I don't like to kill other things, he says, and coyotes coyotes are alright as long as they're far away from me, but I recognize that they are by nature killers and that they take many lives, which is wild. This article was written in 1982, so that's like $3,500 in today's money. So imagine how many coyotes they have each year a day today, with claims that coyotes would cost over 8% of the nation's wool in sheep, with hunters claiming that coyotes are brutal, costly, but above all else, tenacious. With the article continuing to say coyotes are almost unbelievably tenacious, there are abundant stories of 3- and even 2-legged coyotes, animals that have gnawed off their own legs to escape from steel traps and survive to bear young, which brings me back around to the point of this video, which, as you'll see, puts some of these hunters in a very bad light. So I actually started thinking about this while I was watching Blade 2, you know, the scene where they managed to catch one of the Reapers by his arm.
Crawled back in the covert, caught his arm, been gnawing at it like a coyote.
And he starts biting at his arm, and Whistler mentioned he's like a coyote stuck trying to tear off his own arm. And he mentioned this in kind of like a derogatory way, like the creature is so dumb that it'll do this to escape. But as we know, coyotes are actually very intelligent. And this isn't really related, but the term coyote ugly is so mean, especially like in the Urban Dictionary, the explanation by To Devil's Advocate on October 11, 2003, he writes, "Man must gnaw his arm off to avoid waking the sleeping beast that he took home while drunk." He also adds, "I thought I might add what my dad calls double coyote ugly, which is where a man gnaws off his other arm because he knows she'll be looking for a one-armed man," which admittedly did make me laugh. But I started to look for examples of this in real life, continuously came up short until I found this article from LA Times written October 16th, 1988 by Bob Poole, titled "Trap Draws Protest After Coyote Gnaws Off Its Leg." Now, I do want to give a little warning. It's not exactly graphic, but if you're an animal lover, you might find this kind of sad. Even the vermin kind suffering makes me a little sad. So the article starts by saying, "The discovery that a coyote chewed off its own leg to escape a steel-jawed trap in Topanga County, only to hobble into a second nearby trap, has prompted demands for changes in Los Angeles County's coyote control procedures." Now, this wasn't quick either. It's believed she went on for about a week, with Lori March, an animal control officer, saying, "I'm just sorry she had to hobble around for maybe a week or two with one missing leg like that." Animal rights activists are calling for a ban on the leg traps and for closer monitoring of the county agriculture department's work assigned to catch marauding coyotes near residential areas, with agriculture officials saying they keep close records of the condition of all coyotes they capture, but they say they were unaware of the September 30 leg gnawing incident. It was only after an agriculture department trapper killed the injured coyote, a 22-pound female, and took it to a local county animal shelter to be examined for rabies that activists managed to learn about the incident, with local Agoura Animal Shelter attendant Heather Davis saying it was disgusting, really sick. It had gnawed off its rear leg above its paw. The second trap had got its right front leg. Agricultural officials said they would investigate the incident, though no other coyote had ever been injured in one of their traps before. Even still, that Friday, department trappers would remove the traps from Topanga County and place them in Beverly Hills, where an outbreak of coyote attacks on coyotes have been reported, with 3 trappers who responded to the complaints of coyotes saying these traps catch about 125 a year. Officials said that Richard Whiteman, supervising inspector in charge of the trappers, nicknamed pest control workers, saying, "I've never heard of a coyote eating its own leg off in one of our traps. We've never found a leg in a trap. Our workers report every single coyote we capture as to age, sex, weight, anything that looks bad about the animal." Now, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. The county traps do not have teeth and a gap in between their clamp like jaws, so that blood circulation is not cut off in a coyote's leg, which experts believe is the only way a coyote, being as intelligent as they are, would ever tear its own leg off as a last resort if the leg was completely crushed, numb, and unusable with no circulation flowing. Which brings me back around to how smart these animals are, because these are almost the exact same circumstances where it's recommended for a human to perform an emergency amputation, and pretty much what happened to Aaron Ralston, who became trapped under an 800-pound boulder on his arm for over 100 hours and had to cut it off with a dull pocket knife. And this is something that almost no one has seen repeated in nature after or before, even these traps before, which makes me wonder what type of traps the hunters from the first article were using to commonly see coyotes that are missing 1 or 2 legs at a time and still have children. At that point, what's the point of even using the traps? Y'all aren't catching anything, y'all are just maiming these animals and making them more weary of y'all traps in the future. Anyway, an inspection on Whiteman's IMPLEMEN's coyote capture record for September 30th gave no indication that the animal taken from Topanga Canyon was mutilated, which makes you wonder if maybe they have caught coyotes like this before. But the deputy director of the County Agricultural Commission's office, Robert G. Donnelly, said, "I would certainly think that if in the field trappers see something unusual like this about a coyote, they'd report it to their inspector. Captured coyotes are shot by county trappers who inspect their traps every day," with Dr. John Urico, a county health department veterinarian, conducted the autopsy on the coyotes, saying animals trapped by the county typically suffer crushed legs from the trap. The Topanga Canyon coyote had clearly gnawed its leg off. You get callous by what you see after a while, but this really bothered me, bringing credence to this being a very rare phenomenon, with animal activists at the time appearing before the county board of supervisors to protest traps and demand that the county use box-type traps instead. And Captain Barbara Fabricant, a state humane officer from Canoga Park, saying the jaw trap should be outlawed. There is no good reason to have them. Who's sitting at their desk and writing the laws that allow this are not the ones that have to look these frightened trapped animals in the eye and then shoot them. The county has no idea how many county captured coyotes have been mutilated. Lila Brooks, remember her, she'll be important later. She was director of the Hollywood-based California Wildlife Defenders, would join the protest while stating, "Jaw traps are inhumane, obsolete devices invented in 1823 and never improved since. In our technologically advanced society, they should be able to come up with a more humane device." David Brown, environmentalist from Calabasas, bringing up the possibility of using padded traps or long trap chains which can calm coyotes by giving them the impression that they're escaping. But local residents were a little more hesitant on local coyote control efforts being lowered in any way or form, with Topanga Canyon resident Doug Thomas stating 4 coyotes, including the injured one, were caught by the county during the 2.5-month period behind the Thomas's house. Thomas had called for county assistance after his family tried unsuccessfully to catch the rampaging coyotes in a homemade backyard trap, claiming to have lost a dozen of his family's cats to coyotes in the last 25 years he's lived in the canyon. But the last straw came 4 months ago when a coyote entered the home through the small doggy door and dragged away a pet kitten, bringing up the fatal Landale girl murder as well as a non-fatal attack on a 42-year-old Augura man the year before, stating the coyotes are getting too bald and they're getting to be too many of them. That's just crazy to think about. You're just sitting in your house and a coyote just comes in, grabs your pet cat and runs off. Like, not blaming the family or anything because, you just want to have your pet, but at some point, maybe consider getting a big guard dog that can scare the coyotes off, especially when you see them that frequently. But something like this is understandable that Doug Thomas wouldn't care as long as you're getting rid of them. He doesn't care how you do it. But the issue isn't that they're being taken out, it's how they're being taken out. If you don't know, the way most leg traps work is by catching the animal by the foot between 2 metal jaws. When they step on a trigger or a pan, the trap is either weighted or staked to the ground to hold the animal until it's released or put down by a trapper. The traps are not supposed to injure animals, but as we can see, that's not always the case. Plus, there's usually hundreds of traps in an area for these trappers to check on. It could take days or even weeks for them to check them all, meaning the coyote sits there terrified, stuck in one place until their death. Then there's the traps that personal hunters use, which, because they're not set according to county standards, are often stronger, heavier, and meant to catch the animal, giving no bearing as to whether or not the coyote was hurt in the process or not. So it's really no shock when the next week, on October 21st, 1988, the article "Outcry Over Maiming Coyote Results in Trap Switch" by Bob Poole again would go on to say, reacting to complaints that a coyote caught in Topanga Canyon chewed its own leg off to escape a steel-jawed trap, Los Angeles County officials Thursday ordered county trappers to quit using leg traps. County workers instead will attempt to capture coyotes with more humane box traps. Agriculture Department officials said the change in procedure was ordered by County Agricultural Commissioner Leon Spaggi as Board of the Supervisors prepared to vote Tuesday on its own jaw trap ban, as officials admitted they were feeling the bite of animal rights activists who were angered late last week by the mutilation of the coyote in Topanga Canyon, demanding that the county ban leg traps. Aides to Supervisor Mike Antonovic were drafting such a resolution when Spaggi voluntarily agreed to quit using them, with Peter Whitman, another assistant to Antonovic, would state, "We're pleased that was our goal, coyotes killed after they're caught, but the purpose of these traps is not to have animals tortured," with Richard Whiteman, the same as before, saying he will evaluate the effectiveness of the box traps during a 6-month period and report to supervisors. He did question whether the 4-foot-long wire cage traps, which have doors that close when coyotes walk inside, will work, as well well as the leg traps. I don't want to spend $15,000 on them and then find out they don't work or are getting ripped off. I'll prepare a report for the board on an unbiased basis, but the fact is, if they don't work, that's what I'll say. Box traps cost about $125 each. The county has one and will immediately buy 4 more. The county has almost 150 leg traps, which cost about $5 each. There had been no reports of coyote mutilations until the Topanga Canyon incident. This did seem to please most of the activists, though Captain Barbara Fabricat, the state humane officer from Canaga Park, from the previous article, stating, hopefully this is the beginning of the ban on jaw traps for the whole state, with some of the crazier ones not being entirely satisfied, pushing for the elimination on all coyote trapping by the county. They were upset that this whole leg trap incident, which resulted in 4 coyotes being caught and killed, was triggered by a complaint that a coyote had killed a kitten, with Topanga Canyon resident Maggie Bramhall saying, we're horrified that you can call up the county and have coyotes killed just because you lost a cat. We have coyotes up here, but we don't have a coyote problem. Pardon the fuck out of me, ma'am? That's just nuts to say when a coyote literally came into his home and grabbed his cat and then left. That could have just as easily as been a small child or a baby. There's being an animal lover, and then there's not valuing human life. Anyway, Tom Welsh, a San Fernando Valley district supervisor for the Los Angeles City Department of Animal Regulation, would warn the county trapper, be patient, saying it takes a few weeks for coyotes to get used to the walk-in traps. You have to set it up and leave it behind. They look at it suspiciously at first. City animal control officers use cage traps for about 20% of the coyotes they catch. He said they only use leg traps when they're in a hurry to catch a particularly troublesome coyote. Now, this is only partially related, but kind of funny nonetheless. On November 26, 1988, an article called Cheers for Lost Pets, Not Coyotes by John Lassagnol. He agrees that the steel traps are inhumane, stating, I also agree with the state humane officer Barbara Fabricant's statement that jaw traps should be outlawed. What I disagree with is our solution to what has been called a growing coyote problem by a few people. We've hired county trappers to cap coyotes in leg traps, the toothless kind, and shoot them. I believe a more humane solution would be to capture the unwanted coyotes and transport them to an area where the encroachment of man has not destroyed their natural habitat. If we use relocation as means of taking care of a few problem coyotes, then I believe we could better find uses of the steel jaw traps. We could use them on drug dealers. After all, one drug dealer creates more destruction to mankind in one day than all the coyotes combined have in recorded history. Which is just hilarious that a reporter took his time to write out, well, what if we relocate the animals and just hunt drug dealers down like animals instead? Huh? You guys ever think of that? So all this outcry would actually cause quite a discussion, as a coyote leg trap ban would continuously be brought up yearly, and in 1992 the article would be released, Panel Rejects Coyote Leg Trap Ban. Wildlife activist has pushed for prohibition, but an animal control officer puts his hands in one of the devices to demonstrate its safety. It's a bit long and wordy, but I think it gets to the point. By Louis Shahan, where Lila Brooks, who was also mentioned before, joined this fight after the leg gnawing incident, with the article stating, as director of the Hollywood-based California Wildlife Defenders, she has been the impetus for several laws governing the traps, including a ban on their use in unincorporated Los Angeles County. But on Monday, a Los Angeles City Council committee rejected her proposal to ban steel leg hold traps used to catch more than 100 coyotes a year in city parks and foothill backyards. Brooks would respond by dropping a coyote trap in the middle of the leg turn and stating, wild animals tear themselves to pieces trying to get out of these traps, and these traps are catching more domestic animals than coyotes, with the vice president of the Federation of Hillside Canyon Assistance, Alan Kishba, supporting her, stating, cage traps are the only way to humanely trap these wild animals. But Councilman Marvin Broad, Ernie Bernandy, and Animal Control Officer Louis Dideau testifying that the leg hold devices used by the city for 20 years are padded with rubber and do not threaten pets, children, or the estimated 5,000 coyotes that roam the city. To prove their point, Louis Dideau would put his hand into one of the spring-loaded traps, which snapped shut with a bang. Then he smiled at the committee members with the trap closed tightly on his fingers. The demonstration, along with the fact that state officials a year ago outlawed the use of traps with steel teeth, persuaded Broad and Bernandy to both vote to recommend that the city city council take no action on the matter, with Bernandy telling the council coyotes are not easily dealt with and can be vicious. I'm ready to receive and file what we have here and ask that the department continue using the traps, with Lila Brooks later being seen in tears telling reporters, I'm absolutely devastated. I've been fighting for this for more than a year, but I'm going to keep on fighting because animal cruelty is a monster that has to be stopped. Gary Olson, district supervisor for the Department of Animal Regulation in San Fernando Valley, would respond, Lila Brooks has taken on the fight for the coyote, and the coyote couldn't have asked for a better representative. The problem is pets are carried away and eaten by coyotes every single day in Los Angeles, so we target troublemaking coyotes, and to do that we use soft catch traps, which are humane. And it seems he was right about Lila Brooks, because in 1998 California voters would ban the use of steel jaw traps for recreational and commercial purposes. With the passage of Proposition 4, the measure prohibited the use of body gripping traps, including steel jaw traps, padded, unpadded, for capturing fur-bearing and non-game animals, with the limited exception for government officials to use padded or steel jaw traps in extraordinary cases to protect human health or safety. So I just do want to take a quick moment to point out, I do think that this wouldn't have changed anything even if this ban was effect, because as we've seen, there was a coyote that literally came into this family's home and walked out with an animal pet. This absolutely was a case to protect human safety or human health, even if Maggie Bromwell didn't necessarily think so. I still believe that the results would have necessarily been the same. Now, while at first the ban didn't seem very beneficial, with several more articles and papers in the coming years emphasizing the coyote problem and the growing unrest with the community, but it does seem they eventually figured it out, as last article I could really find on the subject mentions Richard Whiteman, supervising inspector in charge of the trappers, mentioned one last time in a paper written April 2007, written by Rex O'Baker, released by the California State Polytechnic University, called A Review of Successful Urban Coyote Management Programs Implemented to Prevent or Reduce Attacks on Humans and Pets in Southern California. Goes through coyote behavior, human attacks on pets, animals, human safety, urban coyote management, wildlife, human and safety, and how officials properly manage them, all while acknowledging Robert Howell, retired Deputy of Agriculture, Commissioner Richard Whiteman, retired Deputy of Agriculture, and Commissioner and Captain Michael S. Post of the Glendale Police Department for the work and advancement they made in urban coyote management. And so that seems to be it. I've heard the phrase coyote ugly for so long in movies and TV shows. References to coyote traps are pretty common. Just the other day watching the Blade movie, I seen them bringing it up. And I kind of just started to wonder, it's like such a common thing in our culture for people to just casually mention it. But I find it so fascinating that as far as I can tell, it's only really happened the once. And it's super rare, with maybe a couple trappers mentioning they've seen it before. But I feel like if it was all that common, there'd be more pictures of handicapped coyotes or legs stuck in traps like they mentioned. There would certainly draw more protest if there were. I mean, looked outraged that this one coyote managed to cause over this several year-long period. All evidence pointed to this being a rare event. Even still, Lila Brooks would dedicate at least 3 years of her life to putting an end to these traps that caused this. I guess my biggest question is, who the hell heard this story and was like, bro, that coyote tore its arm off to escape? Haha. Like, I felt like that waking up to Janice next week. Talk about a coyote trap. Am I right? Like, who the hell? Anyway, I think that's about it, and this ends our tale, traps, legs, and coyotes. Thank you for watching. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It really goes a long way. Leave your favorite coyote fact in the comments. Let me know if you have any other cool or weird history facts you think I should cover. And if you stuck around this long, I just want to say thank you. See what happens when you stick around? You get extra thank you. Alright, you know how to use that extra thank you? Follow me and come on. And remember, no rush. Bye.
Thanks for watching.
See you next time.
Hit the bell button. Hit the bell button.
Massive.